In this video, we're learning about eyewitness testimony. So we'll cover what reconstructive memory is and why eyewitness testimony can be unreliable, how leading questions and post-event information distort memory, and finally, other factors affecting eyewitness accuracy. Let's start by understanding what reconstructive memory is and why this matters for eyewitness testimony. We use the term eyewitness testimony to describe evidence provided by witnesses to crimes or other significant events. This might seem straightforward, but there's a problem. Our memories don't actually work quite the way we might expect them to. Many people assume that memory works a bit like a video recording, where we simply press play and watch events unfold exactly as they happened. In reality, though, memory is reconstructive, which means when we recall an event, we're not actually replaying a perfect recording, but instead, we're rebuilding the memory each time we try to access it. Something really important to understand when we're looking at reconstructive memory are things called schemas, which are mental frameworks that we build up from our past experiences, and they help us to organize and interpret new information. When we witness an event, our existing schemas and expectations can fill in gaps in our memory, sometimes adding details that weren't actually there, or changing details to fit what we expected to happen. To understand how this works a bit better, let's apply this to why eyewitness testimony can be unreliable. Imagine someone witnesses a robbery at a bank. They might have a schema for what a robber looks like based on films they've watched. Perhaps someone wearing dark clothing and a balaclava. If the actual robber was wearing something different, the witness might later remember them fitting their schema of a typical robber rather than what they actually saw. The witness genuinely believes they saw something that didn't quite happen that way, because their memory has been reconstructed using their schemas, rather than being an accurate playback of the original event. Next, let's look at how leading questions and post-event information can distort what witnesses remember. Starting with leading questions, these are just questions that are phrased in a way that suggests a particular answer, or that contain misleading information. The important thing to understand here is that the wording of a question can actually alter what a witness recalls about an event, not just what they report. A classic study that demonstrated this was conducted by Loftus and Palmer in 1974. They wanted to investigate whether the language used in questions could influence people's memories of an event. In their procedure, participants watched film clips of car accidents and were then asked questions about what they'd seen. And in particular, the critical question was about the speed of the cars, but different groups of participants were asked the question with different verbs. So some were asked how fast were the cars going when they hit each other, while others were asked the same question, but with the verb hit replaced by smashed, collided, bumped, or contacted. The findings showed that the verb used significantly affected the speed estimates that participants gave. So those who heard the word smashed estimated an average speed of about 41 miles per hour, while those who heard contacted estimated only about 32 miles per hour. This suggests that the wording of the question influenced how participants reconstructed their memory of the event. A week after watching the film clips, participants were asked whether they had seen any broken glass in the footage, even though in reality there was no broken glass at all. Participants who had originally been asked the question with smashed were more likely to incorrectly report seeing broken glass than those asked with hit. So this shows that the leading question hadn't just influenced their speed estimate at the time, but had actually altered their memory of the event itself, leading them to remember details that never happened. It's as if hearing the word smashed activated their schema for a more serious accident, which typically would involve broken glass, and this became incorporated into their memory. This brings us to post-event information, which just refers to any new information a witness receives after the original event has occurred. This might come from other witnesses, from news reports, or from the questions asked by police or lawyers. To see why this is a problem, imagine two people witness the same crime, and afterwards, one witness mentions to the other that the perpetrator had a tattoo on their arm. Even if the second witness didn't actually notice a tattoo, this new information can become incorporated into their original memory, so they can no longer distinguish between what they actually saw and what they learned afterwards. This is sometimes called the misinformation effect, and it's another reason why eyewitness testimony can be unreliable. Finally, let's explore some other factors that can affect how accurate eyewitness testimony is. One important factor to consider is the role of anxiety and stress, because when we experience high levels of anxiety or stress during an event, this can affect how well we encode information into memory in the first place. If our attention is focused on the threatening or stressful aspects of a situation, we might not process other important details as effectively. This links to something called the weapon focus effect, which just describes how the presence of a weapon can reduce the accuracy of eyewitness identification. To understand why this happens, think about what you'd focus on if someone pulled out a knife in front of you. Your attention would naturally be drawn towards the threat, which means you'd pay less attention to other details, such as the person's face. A study that demonstrated this was conducted by Johnson and Scott in 1976, who wanted to investigate whether the presence of a weapon would affect witnesses' ability to identify a person. Participants were sat in a waiting room where they believed they were waiting to take part in a different study, and then they overheard sounds from the next room before a person emerged from that room. There were two main conditions: a low anxiety condition, where participants overheard a calm conversation about equipment failure, and then a man walked past holding a pen with his hands covered in grease, and a high anxiety condition, where participants overheard a heated argument accompanied by the sound of breaking glass and crashing chairs, before a man ran into the waiting area holding a knife covered in blood. Participants were later asked to identify the person from a set of photographs, and the findings showed that those in the high anxiety condition, who had seen the person holding the blood-covered knife, were significantly less accurate at identifying the person's face compared to those in the low anxiety condition. This supports the idea that the presence of a weapon draws attention away from other details, reducing the accuracy of eyewitness identification. However, a key limitation of this study is that the weapon was always paired with the high anxiety scenario, so it's difficult to know whether the reduced accuracy was caused by the weapon itself, the heightened anxiety, or a combination of both. These findings have some real-world implications, because many crimes do involve weapons, and witnesses in these cases may be less reliable when it comes to identifying perpetrators, even though they might feel completely confident in their memories.
If you haven't heard yet, you can find all of our videos on our website, cognito.org. You'll also find questions, flashcards, exam-style questions, and past papers. And we track all of your progress so that you always know what to study next. So sign up for free by clicking here, or browse our playlist here on YouTube.